March 6th. Pisces over, Pisces over, Pisces over.
Thank you all for bearing with our technical complications. I'm glad that you will now be able to hear every single word that Libby Walkup has to say. Thank you so much for coming once again. Janet is on you, will introduce officially. But I just like to stand up here and appreciate your presence for a moment, because it really means a lot to me that you are supporting this series and program in the department and each other. Next week we have Corey is here. Corey and Wilfred are collaborating on their presentations. So you should all come check that out. 4:15 right here. Janet, ready?
Yes, I have my notes. This will just be about 15 minutes. So, you know, I've been working with Libby for a long time, and read your work. And so the first word that came to my mind was to describe Libby was fearless. But then, you know, I have a brain dysfunction, so that's exactly the wrong word, because I meant because her work embodies a kind of frank honesty about the nuance of being alive that makes people say things like fearless. But really, I think that that's wrong. And really, I just think you're brave. About the person, Libby, who I've also known for a long time. So were you your first class? I just think that she was brilliant long before we met her, about knowing that one can make art and culture, and that they're equally engaging. And she makes it look easy and thrilling, when I'm sure it's kind of like daunting and things like that. But I think that we're really, really lucky. You know, the whole city is really lucky that you came here. And, right, John? Right? Yeah. And I know I'm lucky. And so it's really a privilege for me to introduce Libby to you all.
Yes, Janet, I was in. You were one of my first classes, and I'm pretty sure I didn't say anything all semester, but which made you give me a hug one day in the hallway asking me if I was okay. I'm over that now. I'm cool.
She's over.
Whatever was happening, it's okay now. So I decided to talk to you guys about publishing today because though my work is clearly fascinating, I didn't really know what to say about it right now, or my process. So what I'm going to do is give a brief introduction to the publishing industry and history, and talk about independent publishing. I mean, this is where you say what you're going to say and then say it and then tell them what you said thing, right? Like, that's what I'm doing. I don't have any of this written down that I'm saying right now because I don't write that way. So if my transitions are missing, it's because they aren't there. So anyway, I'm gonna jump right in. Less so than they did 100 or even 50 years ago, do books play a part in pop culture. Like our fading pop princesses being dumped for niche interests or the underdog on American Idol, big publishing does have the ability to make a career, but it can also do nothing for our careers. With the invention of the Gutenberg printing press, it's a little bit early, but you'll get it. The poor, as well as the rich, had access to books, or at least the middle class. More and more peeps learned to read, and there were few books to choose from. In 1490, 50 years after the Gutenberg press was developed, and the first year Wikipedia lists books published by year, one book was published. Tarrant L'Eau Blanche in Valencia, obviously in Spain. In 1843, the same year Dickens' Christmas Carol was published, 7 other novels were published. Publishing houses began establishing themselves in the late 1800s and early 1900s. 47 novels were published in 1915. With only 46 other novels to compete with, you have a high likelihood of being read and even well-liked. According to UNESCO, the United Nations Education, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, there were 328,259 books and editions printed in the US alone in 2010. The organization monitors both the number and type of books published per country per year as an important index of standard of living and education and of a country's self-awareness. Though it's currently at the top of the list, I would hardly call the US self-aware, but no one ever said that quantity is quality. There was a time when, if you were a novelist getting published, you were one of the only novelists getting published. Everyone who was inclined and able to read picked up your book or the journal with an episode of your serial in it because, like the only bar in a small town, there was no other option. For example, Simon & Schuster is an American publisher in the global top 50 reported by Publishers Weekly. Simon & Schuster was founded in 1924 by surprise, two men named Simon and Schuster. Only took them 15 years to add the pocketbooks imprint, read paperbacks. Shortly after they added educational imprint, followed by literally selling out to the man, Marshall Field in 1944 for $3 million in financial security. When Field dies, Simon Schuster and the Third S, Simon Schuster and the Third S, Shimkin, buy the company back. CEOs die, shareholders come in, pocketbooks sell, hardcovers, and eventually CBS and Simon & Schuster merge in 2006. In an interview with the writer and educator Gabriel Cohen for Poets and Writers, John B. Thompson, author of Merchants of Culture, The Publishing Business in the 21st Century, explains that corporate publishers, who primarily began forming umbrella corporations in the 1960s to safeguard against the growing popularity of big chain bookstores and their demands, are concerned with growing their profits by 10% to appease their shareholders. This 10% is unrealistic, according to Thompson, who calls the book industry static. Some tried publishing more books to reach this goal, but that didn't work. The publicity and marketing departments couldn't keep up. So they've all begun publishing fewer books that they estimate will sell well. They call these books big books. This and the state of the economy means that jobs normally done by 2 or 3 people are done by one person, say, so copy editing gets overlooked. On top of each employee being overworked, the big corporations put out so many books every year that they don't have the time or resources to market each book properly. They slap a stack on the shelf at a Barnes & Noble or airport bookstore, put a link up on their website, and hope it sells. Thompson backtracks later when talking about the fear of books in the internet and self-publishing. He says that the publisher's role is absolutely vital in marketing, bringing the content to the attention of others. It is a key role in the process of publishing a book, but if the big publishers don't think our book is a big book, who's going to play this role for us? If the printing press changed the face of writer rock stardom, albeit slowly, then the internet and social networking has changed writer rock stardom seemingly overnight, or at least over the last 15 years. Oh, sorry guys. And you can all look at that later if you want. Simultaneously, folks who have a popular Twitter or blog can get a book deal from big publishing, read Shit My Dad Says. So too has Twitter and blogs launched us into a niche culture. A 2009 article in eMarketer points to a study on the shopping trends of women of Generation Y. It found that younger women are nearly twice as likely as their Gen X counterparts to say they had discovered a new brand or product when a friend mentioned it in an online status update. They're also more influenced by blogs, by professionals, and especially by someone like me. This means that our interests are more spread out than ever before. There aren't only more books, there's more TV shows, more movies, more websites, more blogs, more friends, more everything. We've got a lot of choice on the menu. Think, when all but one homecoming nominee is a popular jock, who wins it? the single popular speech geek on the ballot. This happened in my high school. Instead of things being popular, things trend. When things trend, it may seem as if everyone is tweeting about it, but it's unlikely. In 2009, it took less than 2,000 tweets about a topic tweeted by 600 to 900 people, 900 unique tweeters in a short amount of time for a topic to trend. In that same year, a little under 2 million tweets were tweeted a day, and Twitter had roughly 630,000 unique users. My point is, we're in a position where it's much harder to become a Britney Spears or an NSYNC or a Stephen King or a Harry Potter. Not impossible, but harder. And this is a good thing. We are that underground band you die to see every time they pass through your hometown. We as an individual have more power in the system, and so does our friend, the independent publisher. Last of the American publishers on Publishers Weekly Top 50 list is Perseus. This is a collective of independent publishing companies, including Sealed Press, a press by and for women. Perseus seems to be an anomaly in this list of educational textbook companies and multimedia publishing corporations, juxtaposed with the fierce independence of small indie presses. Perseus claims to be an independent company committed to enabling independent publishers to reach their potential. The company was started by an entrepreneur who purchased Publishers Group West, which is a distribution company dedicated to working with and distributing independent publishers' books. I tried to ask them some questions, but they didn't get back to me via email fast enough. So I still don't really know what it is. Anyway. Thompson says that mid-weight independent book publishers have the hardest time. And they don't get the support that happens between small indie presses, and they can't compete with the big boys. So there aren't many of them. Maybe Perseus creates that support. Poets and Writers runs a State of the Indie Press issue every year because independent presses aren't a new thing. Throughout book publishing history, small groups of young publishing companies published each other and published themselves in vanity presses. For example, Lawrence Ferlinghetti, a West Coast beat, starts City Lights Books and Publishing in 1955. He opened the first paperback bookstore in the country and began publishing books of poetry, soon expanding into other genres. He published Allen Ginsberg, William Carlos Williams, and Charles Bukowski. Virginia Woolf and her husband Leonard purchased a printing press in 1917 with the sole purpose of allowing Virginia to publish her experimental works. They called their publishing company Hogarth Press, which as we know now is a major player. They published Catherine Mansfield, T.S. Eliot, and Sigmund Freud, among others of the Bloomsbury Group, to which they are associated. Even most big publishers start small. In 1924, Simon & Schuster, as I said, a couple of guys decide they want to publish a crossword puzzle book. In 1925, Random House started with a couple of guys with some money. They bought the Modern Library reprints of classic works of literature from publisher Horace Liveray. In 1950, the Knopf started Knopf Publishing with an interest in publishing international literature. In 1897, Doubleday Books began with one dude partnered with another dude who already published newspapers and serialized stories, which was McClure. In 1843, Macmillan was founded in the UK by brothers Daniel and Alexander Macmillan. The list goes on. However, something interesting I found on the Macmillan website was it can be very difficult to get a book published unless you have an agent, and research shows that less than 1% of unsolicited manuscripts sent to publishers achieve publication. So what do these presses, both independent and large, have in common? Good marketing or following and a niche. Good books matter, but who's to define good? And business sense can be learned. The landscape is different in the early 2000s than it was in the early 1900s when publishers started from nothing into an untouched market, but isn't the philosophy the same? Wikipedia lists about 150 small presses in the English language, but Chicago alone has over 200 small and independent presses, varying in size, genre, and magazine versus book. The CLMP's that's the Council of Literary Magazines and Presses, lists of presses and magazines starting with just A is more than a page long. For example, Featherproof Books was founded by Zach Dodson and Jonathan Messinger shortly before Dodson attended this program. They have published 14 books in a little over 5 years. in a little over 5 years. They have a 5-person staff. They are connected to all major forms of social media, even maintaining over 2,000 followers on MySpace. I didn't know anybody used MySpace anymore. Their latest venture, the Minus Times Collected, 20 years, 30 issues, from 1992 to 2012, is a collection of the journal Minus Times, edited by Hunter Kendi. They attend events such as Chicago Book Expo and the AWP Book Fair, but in their second year, they were added to Publishers Group West distribution list. Dotson says that they were lucky for that. He says that PGW is one of 2 book distributors to handle small and independent books, Consortium out of Minneapolis being the other, which I visited back in my undergrad days, which actually has been just recently been picked up by Curbside Splendor's future titles, a press also out of Chicago. PGW distributes books to the major bookstores, helping small publishers overcome one of the biggest hurdles of small press publishing, according to Dotson. What you can expect from Featherproof. Featherproof works on 1 book at a time, giving the staff the opportunity to focus hard on that 1 book. Their marketing is grassroots, utilizing those 2,000 MySpace followers, and they offer 50-50 profit sharing with the author, making the author an active partner in the book design and marketing process. Dotson, also a graphic designer, designs the books himself with the help of other authors. The top one is the book, I'll talk about it in a minute, but just pass this stuff around as the main things that I looked at, if you care to see. 2007 SAIC graduate Lindsay Hunter published Daddies with Featherproof in 2010. Keeping in mind, as some of us learned yesterday, that's a 3-year gap between graduation and publication, and that was her thesis. The book is a collection of miniatures. Each story is accompanied by a specific black and white image of different objects in a small tray, sunglasses, an empty tuna can, and a pack of rolling papers. And the book opens from the top rather than the side. Her second book is coming out with FSG in July, where Thompson points out that when a writer goes to a big press, it hurts the little press. Dotson counters that it's a win-win. The writer gets paid for their work, and the small press, in this case Featherproof, gets more attention for the writer's new popularity, and her previously published work is purchased. Many people who work in independent publishing often hold other jobs. Danielle Dutton, also an SAIC graduate and instructor at Washington University in St. Louis, who runs Dorothy, a publishing project. When she visited campus last semester, explained that she put out the initial money to kickstart the publishing of Dorothy's first 2 books. The rest of the money Dorothy earns goes back into the next books. She'll never earn that money back. But the excitement of publishing overweighs this financial burden. This commitment's proof that most independent publishers want very badly for a book to succeed. If it fails, they fail. So what does one get from an independent publisher? A new writer can expect a more than $1,000 or $2,000 advance, according to Thompson. But what independent publishers lack in monetary backing, they make up for in effort and passion. They also get the backing of their established, even if limitedly recognized name. Poets and Writers points out in 2012's independent publishing issue that no one buys a book because, say, Random House publishes it. Even less is attached to the many editors working at Random House, whereas an independent press can sell a new book based on the success of the last one they put out. Quote, for an author sending out a manuscript without an agent, an indie press can provide a welcoming home for a book that might go begging elsewhere. So, if big publishers only spend marketing money on a small number of books, and independent publishers don't have the resources for a massive marketing campaign, either way, a writer is going to have to market themselves. David Katzman, who wrote A Greater Monster, a book of experimental design and fiction, who I met at the pop-up book fair at the Empty Bottle in December. I wrote all that down. It is David's second book. He spent something like 5 years working with the intricate design. He told himself that he would give himself 1 year to find a publisher. If he didn't find one, he would self-publish. He didn't find a publisher. So with the help of a few friends and a massive crowdfunding success on Kickstarter, he published his book, Full Throttle, a few hundred, I think it might have been in the thousands if I remember right, either a few hundred or a few thousand print run, and money. I think he earned something like $3,000 through Kickstarter, and then did a few other print run of himself, rather than print on demand, which is also an option. And has done all the marketing himself. Self-promotion can be hard for us introverts. Thankfully, the internet makes marketing hella accessible. I won't say it's easy. It's a lot of work, and one must do it like it's a part-time job. Ariel Gore, which is another book that I'm passing around, author of How to Be a Famous Writer Before You're Dead. The book was that was the final catalyst in me starting Ginger Piglet. If you don't know, it was my small literary magazine. Says start small and work your way up. Publish everywhere and often. Go on tour like you're a rock star. Network and a whole bunch of other things. Tweet, blog, Facebook on a regular basis. Find a niche and a following. Guest blog and submit. Even Mr. Dickens, Wikipedia tells me, edited a weekly journal for 20 years, wrote 15 novels, 5 novellas, and hundreds of short stories and nonfiction articles, lectured and performed extensively, was an indefatigable letter writer, and campaigned vigorously for children's rights, education, and other social reforms. In this world of self-promotion, writers, too, must have their day jobs, because they rarely get paid for the writing they do. Keeping in mind that nonfiction and articles written by freelance journalists are more marketable to the paying industries than fiction and CNF. Where the internet is helpful, it simultaneously lets us down. At some point early on, internet got the idea that its content should be free to viewers, royally screwing writers and many other people. It is a place a majority of readers get their content daily, and anyone, their mother, and a bag of chips can put on the blog, giving internet content a bad name and minimizing the need to pay good writers. However, the internet is still a baby and it's learning. Chris Welly, web consultant and internet writing specialist for Forum Communications Co. out of Fargo, says that online marketing rates have nearly doubled every year since 2009. Which means well-read and established magazines are closing the gap between their print edition's advertising costs and their online advertising costs. This is a bit complicated, but on this side, it's what it would cost to do a run in the Smithsonian magazine of varying sizes. And this one is the internet cost, and this explains what CPM means and how to calculate it. But and it's complicated. But basically, these numbers seem small, but with the number of hits that this Smithsonian probably receives, is that the advertising costs are probably comparable, which only gives Smithsonian more money, which only allows them to pay their writers. Is my point. This only applies to established publications, obviously, with a high readership or reach in the internet world, but it does show an optimistic trend. Websites like Byliner, which Matthew Coolish introduced me to, I don't have over there. Well, Byliner pays previously published writers based on a reader subscription fee. So anybody who reads from the website has to subscribe, but that means that it can allow them to pay the writers that submit there. It is a bit elitist because you have to already be published, and I don't know what their standards for publishing are. And apps like Storyville, which is a pretty sweet app, they charge $4.99 every 6 months for the iPad or iPhone, and $1.49 for the recent Kindle release. And you receive a story week as well as some backstories. They accept previously unpublished stories, and they do pay their writers. Featherproof also has an app. I can't remember if it was free. I bought it a long time, but they publish 333 word stories, so it's 3 screens. You can flip on your phone. Anyway, I thought it was fun. But anyone can start a small internet magazine, and for babies with no money and little know-how, this can mean poor design. That said, many of the online publications do not pay, and looks can be deceptive. Bartleby's Notes, edited by Nathaniel Tower, is a basic site that has recently undergone a facelift, but it's still nothing special to look at. However, in the online lit scene, it's earned a heavy following and its stories have won many awards, primarily because Tower himself is published everywhere, over 200 published stories, and stands behind Bartleby itself, submitting, they've won many of their stories have won awards. But beauty is the goal. This is worth it, I promise. Might not look awesome. This is Peripheral Surveys. This is their cover page. When you click into the magazine, you get the editor's letter. And this is the page of contents, in which you can click on separate stories. Once you're in there, you can click on the author and get their bio. Anyway, Peripheral Survey started publication a little over a year ago and has between 10,000 and 15,000 readers. The site design itself is the best I've seen in an online publication. It takes the best parts of a well-designed book or magazine and successfully applies it to a web format. Unlike, sorry. I'm cutting that. I had some things about Issue, which is an online resource in which you can upload a PDF, like in the shape of a magazine, and you can flip through it. And I had all these things that were like, well, that's taking something physical and trying to take the physicality and make it internet, right? Which is cool, but not as cool as integrating this website, which I think is freaking gorgeous. Actually, I have a great quote about that. But anyway, then I realized that they also use Issue, like you can click and make it into a magazine, and the pages flip the long way though, which was cooler than normal magazines, or normal online magazines. So I had to take that and figure what Issue out. So why not? Why not fully integrate with the web and make something that is distinctly web literature, which I know Chelsea would absolutely back me up on. Anyway. Oh, that's not the right thing, is it? Lost my mouse. Guys, where'd it go? I really. Okay, well, I don't really need the last couple of slides.
Oh, there it is.
There's your mouse.
Did we find the mouse? That's cool, that's where I need to be anyway. Okay. Whew. Touch and go there for a minute. So, what have we learned? We've learned that we must have an agent to publish with a big publisher. If that's your goal, start there. We've learned that when submitting a full manuscript to a small publisher, find out what their following is, how long they've been in the game, and pay attention to what efforts they put forth in publishing others' work. If you can't glean any of this information from their online presence, they probably aren't worth pursuing, or I think it would be okay to ask some tactful questions. We've learned that it would behoove your writing career, regardless of what publishing path you take, to build a following. We've used to learn CLMP, or I like to call it PLAMP. Poets and Writers, New Pages, Duotrope, which now is only for paid subscribers, and the creative writing opportunities Yahoo listserv and other such lists to help aid in your search for publishing opportunities, both for full book and single story publications. And remember, there is no secret to this. Roxanne Gay of Pink, The Rumpus, and Tiny Hardcore Press, and many, many, many other things, who spent many years getting rejected, finally stopped submitting and just wrote and wrote, and she still writes and writes if you follow her on Tumblr or her website or her many, many publications. She wrote on her Tumblr a list of publishing how-tos. The secret is to write good things and submit them places. This is a paraphrase. She says that people have this misconception that all publishing is an inside thing and only friends get published. And yes, sometimes that happens and people get lucky. But if your writing is good and you keep trying, it will eventually get published. And Dodson says that when the internet screwed music sales to large music corporations, that the independent production companies picked up the slack. The internet has taken longer to affect the book industry in the same way, but he's confident that something similar is slowly happening in the independent book world. I'm inclined to agree.
Also, I want to thank Laurel and Janet and everybody for coming. If you have questions, I don't have the answers, but I can certainly try.
I have a question.
Sure, what's up?
I am stuck on the point of self-promotion, just as an introvert, not capacity. What's the secret there? Just
I don't think there is a secret. I think it's just doing. I would say start with something that you're comfortable. I mean, okay, look at Josh in the back of the room nodding his head. Josh is terrified of speaking in front of people and talking to people, but he does it anyway. And then now, what is it? No, you read it, West Side. Right. Thanks, because I was blanking on all of those names right at this moment. And I'm not great at it either, except for the internet part where I don't actually have to like be in front of people for real. But I would say that just starting slow, like maybe hit up, West Side or Real Talk Live, like if they're only once a month. Go and watch first, maybe get introduced to a few people because I also go and Josh goes and we know some people. And then, as you get comfortable with what's happening there, maybe get up and read, and your heart's going to feel like it's coming out of your chest, and your head is probably going to feel like it's exploding, but you'll survive, and then you just do it more and more until that feeling happens less, though it will never go away, if reading is your thing. Otherwise, like, start a blog. You don't actually have to talk to people, and you can write little things, and eventually people will start reading it. It's not, there is no one way, there is no secret, I don't think, and some of these ways don't work for everyone. But I know some indie, I can't think of her name right now, but I can think of her image. But I think she's published a couple of books now, but she started by writing a blog, and all of a sudden, this shit has access to Twitter. If you have funny things to say, join Twitter. Funny short things to say. Anyway, that's it. I don't know if there's a secret or tip. Just try some things and see how it goes for you. And try not to let your head explode. Any other questions?
Did you say Lindsay Hunter's coming out with Farrar Straus?
Yeah, I think it was July 2nd. Yeah,
You mean I missed it, or it's this July?
Just coming on. According to her Tumblr, yeah, it was just coming on. That's what Zach said too. I talked to him on the phone. I was disappointed in you just answering my questions in the email, but yeah, I think she's got 2 books actually, so I think she got a 2-book deal.
That's great.
So it's a pretty good book. I passed it around. I read it. There was a lot of sex stuff in it, so that's exciting always. Anything else, guys? so we put out an issue last. It was late November, early December. I know we had copies at the public book fair, which I was really excited about. I think I'm going to wait another winter to publish another one. I think I'm going to have a Chicago theme, so Chicago writers, Chicago stories, things like that. I think I'm going to specifically go to a more lyric essay, fractured narrative, which is what I lean toward in choosing submissions anyway, but I think I'm going to start defining that. Anyway, so there's that. After I graduate, I would like to start doing one every other, or 2 a year. I just haven't been able to. Okay, so that's Ginger Piglet. John just appointed me, John Rich here in the second row, just appointed me the co-director of Chicago Writers House. So I'm also very excited about that. We're working on the book expo for next year and other small things that will be happening. I actually made this in a list today when I'm supposed to be paying attention to something else. Actually, my friend Amy Norris and I have started making like sewing books. She's teaching me how to sew books, and we are considering starting a business. That's a small Etsy business. Selling those books. And there was one other thing, I think. Otherwise, the writing. I'm currently working on my thesis, as most of us are, and it's what I call them stories. It's a collection of lyric, essay, fractured narrative stories in which I have just over 20,000 words for. I was really glad to hit that mark, so pretty impressed that I got that far. And what I don't think it'll be a complete thing by the time graduation is done, or by the time graduation happens, but I'm hoping that that is the book that we're going to publish at some point in the next year or two. Would be my goal, but I plan on working very hard at it. Does that answer your question? Is that too many words? Okay.
Thanks very much for coming.